Welcome back to Behind the Print podcast, where we feature industry leaders and uncover the creative minds and their businesses within the world of professional printing. Our mission is to provide you with inspiring, actionable resources that elevate your business projects and accelerate your journey to excellence in profit and print. Today's episode is From Page to Heart, printing stories that teach emotional intelligence. And I'm here today with My Mama Says founder, Nadine Levitt.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so glad to have you on the show. I love your little books that you have. They're so cute.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So tell me, how did My Mama Says all start?
Well, I have kids of my own. I've been in education for a long time, so almost over a decade now. I started in ed tech. I was a recovering lawyer before that and a touring opera singer, which is kind of a very circuitous kind of way to education. But I really am very passionate about education, about seeing those light bulb moments in kids. And I was drawn further and further into it. And now it's been 10 years or so. So that's how that all started. But with my own kids, I have one in particular who's highly sensitive and had just huge emotions. And I wanted to understand, like, how can I empower her and not, and sort of teach her about her emotions in a healthy way that doesn't sort of repress these emotions, but also make her realize that, hold her accountable for her actions. And so I think emotional intelligence is so foundational for a successful, happy life, whether it's relationship skills, whether it's academic performance or professional performance or responsible decision making at the foundation level is really, can you regulate your emotions and read other people's emotions?
That's really cool. So it started almost as a family project and now has turned into much more. So
Hmm.
so tell me, who's your primary audience and how does My Mama Says support families developing children's emotional intelligence?
So we started in schools. So we were doing workshops in schools all around the country. And we started with a book that was basically just building the emotional vocabulary for kids. So there's a lot of everything that we do is research based. So when we see, for example, a lot of research backs up that it's just increasing your emotional vocabulary, being able to label your emotions and say, I'm feeling really angry right now and frustrated and da da da. It actually creates space around those emotions. So it started with a book that was just building that vocabulary for younger kids without judgment, without sort of saying anything is bad or good. And then from there, it built into a direct to consumer subscription box, which goes to families. And the idea really in those subscription boxes is that we want to give kids all the tools that they're going to need, from worksheets, fun puzzles, and things like that, to build their emotional vocabulary, but also learn tools that can calm their nervous systems and create space around emotions. One of the biggest differences, I guess, that we have versus other programs is that we don't stop at sort of that first emotion. So you can see somebody getting really angry, but when was the last time you felt one emotion ever? Right? We always feel a whole myriad of emotions all at the time. And so we wanted to dig a little deeper into that, because if it is helpful to label one emotion, it must be more helpful to label more. And actually it is, because what it does is when you're living within fear and anger and so forth, you're actually using your limbic part of your brain. And so that's not a very good place to be making decisions or problem solving. You really do that with your frontal cortex here. And in order to kick it from your limbic back into your frontal cortex, curiosity is a great way to do that. And so we made these little books. And so every box is themed with a particular emotion. And then in each box, the core of each box are these little books that you guys print. And there's the fear one and the sadness. So we have all these different emotions, and every month it's a different emotion. But importantly, we also include other products. Like, for example, we have like a stuffy that goes with it, because studies show that tactile objects are also very calming to the nervous system. In these little books, at the back of these books, we include a QR code for the wrap version of that book. So there's lots of ways that you can consume the stories, and each story talks not only about anger, but all the other emotions that come along with it, and how they work together, and how there are positive sides to every emotion. So even fear or anger, like, there's a really good part of fear, a very necessary part of fear. And nothing in history would have happened but for fear. So there's a lot of positive things that come with these emotions. And I don't want to stigmatize anything. So yeah.
That's so interesting. That's even stuff that I've learned just talking to you now.
Thanks.
So, can you walk us through your unique approach behind My Mama Says and how it integrates emotional learning into daily lives for children and parents?
Sure. So one of the things I just talked about, which was kicking it, using curiosity and storytelling, because storytelling creates a very safe space for kids to be able to not so directly, it's much easier for them to relate to another person going through the same instance without their alarms going off when they're having those heightened emotions themselves. So when they're listening to the angry hippo, for example, and how the angry hippo starts to storm and how the angry hippo starts to calm down, there's all these guiding questions afterwards that you can start these conversations with your kids about how to bring it back to their own situations. And what are those tools? Oh, he took a deep breath. Okay. Do you ever do that? Does that work for you? Things like that, right? And then each box also has other products inside it that are also fun and engaging. There's puzzles. We've got, for example, the scared penguin has an ice tray because we teach our kids that you can put fear on ice and then fact check the stories that we tell ourselves about what's driving that fear, because sometimes they're not based on reality. They're actually based on sort of fairy tales that we tell ourselves. We have magnet boards and activity sets. We have placemats. We have yoga cards. We have all sorts of, we have bath bombs and towels and terrariums, all sorts of different things that allow kids to in their daily life have a reminder to have these conversations. But the books are the sort of these little books are sort of the core of it, because it's an easy thing to put by the bed and it's an easy thing before bedtime to read it and just to remind yourselves. And the reason for the wraps is that, again, it's an easy thing to listen to on the way to work or on the way to school, for people. And it's just a fun sort of rap version of the song or the book.
It's really awesome. I love how it's for everyone. Everyone can get into it. And coming from parents, it goes to show how kids watch their parents and then do what the parents says or does in a similar manner. So if the parents are practicing emotional intelligence, the kids quite closely will follow along.
It is funny. There's that wonderful saying, and I can't remember who said it initially, but it was don't be worried about whether your kids are listening to you, be worried if they're watching. Because often, often we don't. I mean, I do want to say it is completely natural for us all to lose it at times and to us, this is my whole life's work. And I've definitely, spilled the milk a few times and raised my voice or whatever else and wished that I had responded differently. But I also think it's really important for our kids to see that. And then how do we pick ourselves back up and how do we turn that into a learning experience where we say, okay, can we circle back to that? I don't like how I reacted, and I should have probably taken a breath there or walked away and come back when I can respond rather than react. And when they see how we can do it, then they can do it too, rather than, having this fixed mindset of you have to be perfect all the time. It's not about that. I think relationships can deepen actually with conflict or with those kinds of mistakes where we might have a little regret about how we react.
Yeah, and those conversations can be really hard sometimes, revisiting hard topics and coming back after you've got your breath. So, teaching kids that from a small age is really important because I see a lot of adults today have a hard time practicing that.
100%. And I think also it removes some of the shame around it, because I think when you do react badly and then you're often feeling ashamed that you did that. And the best thing you can ever do is talk about it and share it. And then it sort of shines the light on the situation. And then usually, I mean, most people have also been in that, can relate to that particular instance, and especially parents, I feel like. So I think that all of the tools in these boxes are really there to start conversations and give sort of a nice framework around those conversations. And you're right, many parents didn't learn this. Like I certainly didn't learn this at school. I had to get my master's in education leadership in order to learn some of this stuff and read a lot of literature and studies and so forth about emotions. But it wasn't something that as a kid I learned. It was something that you sort of were expected to just have and develop. But I think these are really important things that just shed a different perspective on emotions and hopefully inspire a little bit of grace around it too. So we give each other the benefit of the doubt a little bit.
Yes, totally. I hear you on the grace part. You got to have a little grace for people.
It was
So you
funny, actually. My daughter, I will share one really funny story. It is very powerful when your kids can start to also speak the same language and you're all having the same approach. Because in those moments where you may start to spin, they can remind you and bring you back. And this happened to me a while ago. My daughter is very creative and going to school sometimes can be difficult. So having any kind of a schedule can be very difficult. And it's always a stressful time. And so I had a whole plan with her. We had a whole meeting about it. She made a poster about all the things that she would do and how she had a schedule and how we were going to work as a team. And it was great. And that morning I woke up, I reminded her and I said, don't forget, I've got a phone call, a work call, but you're going to do all these things, right? She said, absolutely, Mom, I got this. And I went and did my call, came back and opened her door, and there were feathers and beads everywhere. She was still in her pajamas, like her bed's unmade, like nothing except for her art had been done. And I just about, I just looked at her and went like this. And she looked at me how old was she then? Probably 7 or 8. And she said, Mom, are you telling yourself the story that I don't care about our plan and I don't care about your time? Because that's not what's going on. Like, I just got distracted. But if you give me 10 minutes, I'll get ready. And it completely de escalated everything because she's right. I was telling myself that story and I was about to completely blow up. And she turned it around for me because she was speaking that language too. So when they have the same understanding and you can actually be there for each other.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's creating community in a different way that's just so much deeper and will last so much longer.
Mm-hmm. That's the hope.
Yeah, hopefully. So going into the books a little bit more, tell me, how do you streamline your design process and stay organized between books?
Well, I do everything pretty much myself. So the initial illustrations were done by a good friend of mine, Mitzi Rosas, who's fabulous. But she has a job. I take those and as a base, and then I do all the illustrations for the little books, all of these. So I write the stories, I edit the stories, so it's all me, and then I illustrate them, and then I also make the music videos. So it's a lot of work, especially when you then also put all the other things of running a business and stuff in there. But I think having just a schedule and having deadlines is what probably motivates me the most, and saying, okay, you have to get this done by then. Sometimes there is crazy things happen. Like, I live in LA, so when the LA fires happened, for example, and I got evacuated, like, I was a little behind and I was definitely distracted. I have to commend you, the team. I had emailed and said, is there any way that you can send, because I had to do a presentation for some of the schools, said, is there any way you can send me 10 by email and then ship the rest later? And you guys are very, very good about it. So most of the time, I'm very good about sticking to a schedule, but it is a tight timeline. And I wish that we were like 3 months ahead. But often when things like the fires happen, now we've got a little cushion again. But when certain things happen, it certainly can be a little stressful to make sure you get stuff done.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That sounds like a lot of work, but you do a great job. I love those books so much, and your website is just gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So, what is the thought process that goes into the characters that you choose for the emotions? Like the hippo, for example, how did he become anger?
I think part of it was I was brainstorming with lots of kids in the workshop. So some of this came from the workshops that I did in schools, and asking kids, if you like, how do you feel? And those were some of the exercises we started with. When you feel anger, how do you feel? What kinds of things do you want to do? And there was a lot of huffing and puffing and stomping and things like that. And so that was kind of a natural progression to, okay, what animal can do that? And it just happened, obviously red is something that many kids associate with anger. You see red. And so he became the red angry hippo. So Yeah, that's an example. But most of these things came from all the workshops because it started with just no characters and just talking about emotions and having all sorts of improv games and theater games and things like that. And then it turned from there into characters. And I also, the other thing that I did was once we had characters, I had sort of coloring sheets of, we hadn't colored anything yet. And I still use them today, actually. And they're just the outline, they're coloring sheets of all the characters. And it says, sometimes I see it and it's a blank slate, sort of a blank line and a hippo. And then they can say for themselves whether it's an angry hippo. And then, by the way, and it's totally not wrong to say something different, but it was something that a few of the characters actually got printed in my first book because I just thought it was so cute that these kids made their own versions of these things. And sometimes it was like silly. It was like, the funny monkey, not the grateful monkey. And I was like, I don't know that funny is really an emotion, but it's cute. It's like, but then you start that conversation. So it's like there's no wrong answer. It's just you can use everything just to start those conversations. Like another one was a very interesting conversation I had with a 5-year-old was whether or not fluffy could be an emotion. You're feeling fluffy. I said, I don't know that that's an emotion, but maybe it actually is because maybe it's that you're not feeling like you've got any substance to you or something. Like, you know? So there's no right or wrong. I try to cover the emotions that are most common that I think the kids are going to, so these foundational core emotions that I think they're going to really need. And then we kind of go from there. We have 30 emotions as part of that story.
Wow, 30 is a lot. I am going to have to read more of those books.
You'll get more.
Perfect. We're excited. So you'd mentioned the development of the characters was like a breakthrough for you guys. Do you think that could have been something that shaped the overall vision of My Mama Says?
It's always morphing, right? It hasn't ever been a destination because I'm always so hungry to learn more and understand more about emotions. It's such a complex area of research. And so people who I idolize, Brene Brown, for example, even she, I think, is constantly like, I don't know that we are ever really going to be able to know how other people feel. We can barely know how we feel. However, I would say, the more that we start to think of emotions as sort of watercolors, where because we feel many different emotions and they start to influence each other, I think we actually can get better and better at predicting how people are feeling and how we are feeling. I think how the research develops definitely influences what we do with our books, what we do with our stories, what we do with our products and our approach. Because we're definitely, our whole thing is can we be effective and fun? So everything that we do has to have some science behind it. And then we take that concept and then we workshop it ourselves to make sure that we agree with it. And then from there, it ends up as part of our program. So that's kind of the process.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what's next for My Mama Says? Do you guys have any future achievements or goals?
Oh gosh, what a great question. I think right now I'm so busy just trying to keep up with the sort of work, but eventually I think it would be once we've made it all the way through the 30 emotions and then I can rest and maybe start over again. Then it's more, can we do our own research maybe and start to do a little bit more of our own work on emotions and emotional development. I would really like to take this at scale back into schools and hopefully have it be something that's actually just offered for free in schools because I do think it's such a groundbreak. It's just such a foundational thing that all kids need to do. And I don't think that all of these programs should be fun. And education, especially social emotional learning, should be fun. It's just rife and full of opportunities to play games and connect with other people. And it really, therefore, is a very fun thing that we should be teaching. So when I see people teaching it through worksheets that are not puzzles, that are just like repeating back type of thing, then I get a little nervous because I was like, I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think acting, theater, the arts, all those types of things is like a great way to do it. But The other thing that we're doing now actually is we're just testing the waters on it, is allowing people to sort of build their own boxes. So if they don't want to do a subscription, they can just go in and say, I just want the books, I just want the anger and the love one, for example. And then you get, and you say, I want the pasta and I want the plushie and I want the cookie cutters and I want maybe some bath bombs or whatever. And then those are the types of things. So we're doing a la carte, build your own boxes now too. So those are the key things. Maybe those are the sort of biggest things. And I think down the line, maybe even having kids be able to do more content and having it be more of a platform where kids share their own stories, kind of like a Mr. Robinson, how he was kind of social emotional learning, but letting kids lead it rather than an adult.
That's really exciting. It sounds like you have a lot planned.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if that one's a little, that's the 10-year plan, but the others are sort of in the next 2 years, I hope.
Hey, exciting either way.
Thank you.
So on the flip side, what challenges or obstacles are holding you guys back right now?
The one big obstacle is the software, because what we do is we have both subscriptions and we have single products. And a lot of websites, e-commerce sites and so forth are not really set up for that. So that's one thing. Another thing is it's always balancing. We have a big growth and then balancing that with making sure we don't expand too quickly and stay true to what our mission really is. I never want to include something because it's good enough. It's got to be awesome. Like it's got to be something, and it is very time intensive, labor intensive to test everything so that, when you get something, having kids test it, do they like it? And you're always going to get some that don't like certain things, but I don't want to put things in the box just because, oh, it's good enough. It's filling. And I guess as that progresses, there will be moments where we have to change certain things because suppliers will change or whatever else. But I really try very, very hard to provide healthy conversations and products that are sort of going to support that and in a fun and effective way.
I definitely see that coming through in every aspect of your business.
Oh, thank you.
So, what advice would you give somebody just starting their small business?
Just do it. You got to start. You got to start somewhere, right? And I think this is a prime example. There's a lot of authors, for example, out there who are just going to wait for a publisher to pick them up or an agent to pick them up and take them to a publisher and so on and so forth. There's a lot that you can do by yourself. You can get these books printed, even if it's just a small run of books printed. There's so many ways to use, even if you're just using things on Canva or whatever to design stuff. Just you got to get in business to be in business, someone once said to me, and it really is true that you just have to invest in yourself and just get started in this. And I think printing your own stuff and just getting it out to people, even if it's not the end result, you don't have to make everything absolutely like, okay, it's like this forever. You could just do a small run, and then when you workshop it, you decide, you know what, I could make that better. Then you could tweak it and go back and get more printing. So I think seeing it as a journey and just getting started and
Going head
listening.
first.
Yeah. And I think listening to, I love the idea of workshopping, listening to who the customers really are. In our case, it's both parents and kids, and I guess educators too, but trying to get feedback wherever you can. And sometimes that can be in social settings. So you feel awkward about asking friends and stuff, but you can just get started with your own community and saying, hey, I would love your feedback. Can you come to this workshop or whatever else? And I think listening to the customer and giving them a space to be really honest about what they think is really important.
Customer feedback plays a huge role then in your business.
For sure. Yeah, we want to see it's not just there's a few elements to it. One is it fun, right? Are the kids engaged in it? And then two, is it effective? Are they actually learning anything from it? And we have tweaked certain things. Like for example, we had some crafts in our boxes that the kids loved so much, but we found that they weren't actually reading the instructions before doing some of these things. And so they weren't actually learning about that particular emotion. So we kind of changed the way that we wrapped it so that they had to read the instructions beforehand. And that made a really big difference in terms of what they took away. And we also included in the puzzles and the worksheets at the end, because the more we found that the greater repetition we had and greater opportunity for the kids to repeat back what those key learnings were and what those tools were to regulate that particular emotion, the higher the chance that they would retain it.
That's really, really interesting. How did you do that type of research? Was it all at the workshops?
It was mostly, well, within the school stuff, but it's also in private workshops and then also some parent surveys as well. So we have people that we work with that, I've set up to say, I don't want to hear that it's great. So tell me what's not great about it. And also, I think videoing responses is really helpful, or you not saying anything, just watching what kids do or watching what the response is. I think the last thing is the reason that it's all of those things, right, that are important is because sometimes the response can be in the moment really, really positive, but then in a week's time, you realize it hasn't been retained. And so then you go, okay, well, that's a problem. Like we need to change something about our approach in order to make sure it's being retained. And that's, for example, why the rap songs exist, because it taps into a different part of your brain so that you start to hum along to that song and you start to remember in a different way and it's retained. It's like people with Alzheimer's, they remember the lyrics to the song, even if they can't remember their daughter's name. So there is something about that part of the brain that is being tapped into that helps with the retention of that information.
That's just so interesting. That blows my mind. So, if you had a day to spend completely free, however you'd like, away from the office, what would you be doing?
Probably going for a run with my dogs. I have two giant schnauzers, and just being out and about outside in the sunshine would be lovely, and going for a long, long run.
That sounds like so much fun. So, how can our listeners connect with you? Excuse me. How can our listeners connect with you, learn more, or subscribe to My Mama Says?
So you can go to mymamasays.com for the website, and that's where you would learn more and subscribe. And that's Mama, M-A-M-A. So mymamasays.com. Or you can go on socials, My Mama Says Book on all social media, and you can connect with us there.
Awesome. So, you guys heard her. Social media, My Mama Says book, and mymamasays.com. But that's another wrap on another episode of Behind the Print podcast. Thanks to our listeners for joining us as we have explored the artistry and innovation of the printing world. Remember, having a strong vision, building the right strategy, and using tools like print to amplify your message will make your brand stand out from the crowd. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to stop by printingcenterusa.com and grab yourself a free sample pack to share with your fellow business enthusiasts. Until next time, keep those creative sparks flying, and remember, there's always more to discover behind the print.
Thanks for having me.